Yeah, welcome everyone. Um, Let me share my screen. Good. Okay. So what 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 we are going to see today is in the market we have a number of automation tools, and each can be fit into a bucket of requirements, right? Let's say few people have this kind of requirements and few people have different requirements. How we can see what are the key parameters to be measured when you are going to pick up the automation tool. So we are trying to uh, tell a little bit about what are the experience we have so far, and then try to make it as a bucket of information. Let's say these are the things, and you can pick up these kind of things for your automation requirement. So let's jump into the process. A test automation is a process where it would be start in the QA process whenever you have a stable product. Let's say, for example, the entry point for automation is something like your product is ready. It's go for the first release, and you have to be think few different mechanisms before getting to automation. The first thing is what is the current status of the product. Let's say, for example, this is version V1. In version V2, we have so many different requirements, so we are going to change things rapidly. So you have to be considered that let's wait some time to start automation. And then let's say, for example, you have so many defects on the application, and we need to have at least 80 or 70 percentage of stable things to be delivered, then we can start automation. So that is what the requirement is coming in. You have to be clearly understand when to start. You feel that, okay, let's start. This is a time to start the automation, and we have a stable product. At least we have a few customers coming in, and we are planning for so much frequent releases on the products. Then that's the right time. You can create a test automation suite for that. Uh, that is where the requirement understanding coming in, and you have to be clearly define your goals. I mean, let's say what are the things you are going to achieve with automation. Let's say, for example, what are the tests you are going to take. Let's say you have regression and smoke. What is the scope for the automation? You can't automate everything, right? Let's say, for example, you have a product where it will have a maps as a component. At that time, the maps covers only 5 to 3% of your test automation. I mean, 3% of your automation. So, manual test cases suit where you are going to migrate to automation. At that time, maps is a little complex product to automate, right? So you don't worry about, okay, we have map component, so we have to get right fit for the tool. It's not that complex thing to be considered because it's a critical component to automate. That's okay. We can, if that is so critical, how much the business impact you have. Based on that, you can, okay, let's take this as a separate tool, or you can consider in a different way. What is your major chunk of your automation cases comes into play? Based on that, you can clearly define the automation, and then we can define the scope as well. So, okay, these are the things I'm going to automate for now. These are the complex things in my pipeline, but it's not a mission or a business critical test cases. So you can define the scope very clearly. These are the test cases I'm going to pick up for this automation. And then you have a number of variety tools in the market. You have Selenium, you have Playwright, you have Cypress, you have a number of low code or no framework automation tools. So that's where our bucket fits into here, how we can decide you are selecting the right process. If you have things in place, what is your framework components to be? Let's say we have multiple different frameworks in place. We have data driven, we have test driven, we have a hybrid framework. These are the things you can consider based on your requirement. But for this webinar, we are restrict ourselves on selecting the right tool. We don't discuss more about the framework creation. But on the framework creation side, if your test case, let's say for data, you have a data driven framework where, let's say, for example, You have a login test. Okay. Now you are feeding your test with 10 different login passwords. It might grow at scale. Let's say, for example, you might enter 20 or 30 logins at that time. Your test cases are getting growing. Is someone else asking any questions? Screen is not visible. Oh. Now? No? The presentation is not visible? Okay. Let me reshare it. Give me a second. I'll open it on browser instead of my desktop. Uploading. Super slow internet. Now it's visible, right? Cool. Fine. So this is a slide we are talking about. Yes, you have to be clearly define your requirement and then scope of the automation. What are going to do it right now? What is in your pipeline? And then you have to have a strategies to pick up your right tool and then framework. So we are talking about framework. We have data driven and data driven, test driven or hybrid or behavior driven. These are the different kind of frameworks we have in the market. So for example, data driven is something like you have to automate login test cases. You have 10 different combinations to automate. Now it will grow up to 20 test cases, 30 users, 40 users, which means that your test cases are growing at the scale of your test data is growing. So your entire test is driven by data, right? If your test is getting increased, your case is going to be increased. So that is we call it as data driven. We have some methodologies to write a data driven framework. We are not going to see it in depth for this session. We are restricting ourselves on pick up the right tool. So these are the different frameworks in the market. Behavior driven is something like where you can create a feature files and you are creating a step bindings for that. Whoever writing feature file without writing any code, they are automating the thing. So it's something different. It's like you have to be predefined all your test steps and then people can easily write feature files. The feature file automatically bind with your existing step bindings, and that is a behavior-driven testing. Cool. You have everything in place. Now you have to be dry run your script, and you have to be integrate with your CI/CD. Right? CI/CD is nothing but continuous integration and deployment. There is variety of tools in the market. You have Jenkins, you have GitLab, you have GitHub CI, where these are the different CI tools available on the market, and you can utilize it. It's nothing but the concept is, let's say you have 10 people automation team. Each member can contribute on a daily basis for some time. And you have to be regularly merge your code, which means you are integrate your multiple different people code on the same repository. And if you are not deploy it on a regular basis, if you are not executing on a regular basis, it might ended up saying that something is breaking very hardly, right? Let's say 10 people contributing, and then on a daily basis, every night you are creating one test automation suite, which is combined the entire people develop, and you run it again and ensure that it's very stable for now. So that's what the role of CI/CD. That is the end goal of our automation. Then once you are executing on a daily basis, you have to be monitor your test case. Okay, is that stable? Or if something is failed, you have to be backtrack and see whether it's an application defect or your automation flakiness. So these are the entire process on the test automation. Any questions so far? Cool. Thank you. Now, we are coming to understand the requirement, right? So that is the entry point. What can and what cannot be is very well scoped, and you have to have a clear requirement on what is your test automation suite going to do. So the first requirement is, what are the tests you are going to automate? You have multiple different tests. Let's say, for example, you have a E2E where it is end-to-end test. You have a component level test. You might have an API level test. You have a DB level test. So you have to understand the test. Let's say, for example, you have a web application, which is a Flipkart, for example. If you take a Flipkart as an example, which is an e-commerce product in India, where you are going to write a test automation suite for that. So now you have to clearly understand what is my scope is. So I'm going to write only component testing. Component testing is nothing but on each page we have different components. For example, you have a text box. You have, if you take a Flipkart as an example, you have a search in the top, right? That is basically a component. The component is only interacting with specific API. It doesn't worry about all the different components in the UI. Let's say you have a product view page, you have a filter page, you have a search page. So we are targeting only the component page. So at that time, we are trying to automate only specific APIs and then specific components which is interacted with. And it's an isolated test. Component tests are completely like, you are going to enter your keyword in the text box. It will give you the list of suggestions. If it's coming in, I'm done. My test case is done. I'm only isolating the component and test on the component level. I don't worry about the entire page basically. So that's what component is. Why I need to consider component as a different thing is, we have multiple options for that. Let's say you are testing only on the UI component level. You don't worry about what is your backend is doing. You have some data incoming, and you have to ensure that your UI is not breaking. At that time, you might have an approach called, you can use a mock server to serve the data for the UI. I don't worry about my backend. I only worry about my front-end component. And then you can mark your test, and then you can do it. So that is a totally different field to automate, right? You have a mock server. It will communicate to your front end, and you make all the things on the front end. If front end is behaving as expected, that's fine. You mark your front end as completed. Now you have a separate component called API. You have a separate suite to automate your API. There is no mix and match between your UI and backend system. So how you are going to approach your problem. So you have to be clearly defined what is your requirement. I'm going to component testing. I'm going to do the API testing. Some cases you might say that I don't make my automation so complex. I have end-to-end requirement for my test. Let's say, for example, on the Flipkart side, one customer is coming in, they search the product and see all the products, click on one product, check out it, add it to the cart and then check out the product. My test case is done. It's like an end-to-end of your product, right? So you have in here, you have to be ensure that your entire system is working as expected. You should not wire your backend with mock server. You should use the actual server, and then you have to be wire. You can intercept the network, but you don't control your backend. What are the data coming from the backend? You have to be prepare your backend better for the E2E test cases, right? Let's say, for example, I have only a specific test cases to be searched. So you have to be preload your database so that you can expect, let's say, for example, I'm typing A, it should be coming ABC. You have to be feed the data on the backend so that if I type A, the only possible solution for that is ABC. If something is coming up, my test case is broken. So you have to have a clear approach on how you are going to run your end-to-end test. That is the first requirement. You have to be free how to break your components and test it. Then next step would be on the platform. On the Flipkart, if you take, people can be coming from any different browsers, any different operating system, right? So that is a mission critical issue. If, let's say, for example, some people your majority of users are coming from Chrome, 70%. Your remaining 20% is coming from Firefox. If your entire Firefox is not working, it means something major breaking things are happening. On a manual side, you can't test same test case in 10 different combinations. Linux with Chrome, Firefox with Chrome, Firefox with Linux, and come to Windows. Windows have a number of browsers. You can't test everything manually. So automation is the best fit to automate this thing. So what is your requirement? It doesn't mean that I'm able to test my cross-browser things. So it doesn't mean that you test everything, because let's say, for example, you are creating you are working on a banking application. The banking application, it is used by the bankers. So you can control that. Hey, this is supported only on Chrome. Other browsers we are not tested it. So you always try to use it on Chrome. You can restrict your user on the browser level. So at that time, you don't worry about the cross-browser testing. That's what the scope is coming in. You have to be clearly define your scope. And then who's your stakeholders? Let's say you are writing an automation suite. Who are the people going to be get benefited? Definitely your dev team. That is one thing. And your management people might come and see what is happening on the QA. So each people have a different eye view, right? If I'm a developer, I'm going to see your automation suite. I'm seeing in a different way. What are the APIs going on? What are the APIs are getting breaks? What is the test case is doing? So these are the detailed information I need to look into it. But if someone from management team, let's say your VP or a director is come and see your suite, they don't care about what is the API is. They care only about what is the pass percentage, how many test cases are running, what is the quality of the product. Let's say you are running 1,000 test cases, there is 900 test cases are getting passed, which is a 90%. We are saying that, okay, that is better. So that kind of view have the management people, and we have a different eye on what is happening. So you have to be considered as how your reporting mechanism works. I need to have so much of customization. I need to share this way for these many people. I need to share this report in a different view for these many people. So what are your stakeholders? So you have to be care about that. And then your framework should be capable enough to customize on this level. Then community support. If you are trying on open source, because most of the automation things running now is open source. One of the example is Selenium. So Selenium has have a very huge and nice community support, but recent players like Playwright or Cypress or Test Cafe. These are the different players in the market on the open source level. So you have to check your community first. Let's say, for example, you are stuck in a problem, how much the community can help. You can go to the community page. If you go to their tool, they have a section called community. They might have a Slack channel. They might have different platforms to communicate. You just go and join with them and see what is the happenings in the community, how much questions are posed, what is the people feeling about the product, how many defects are getting raised. You go to the GitHub page and see what is the issues are there, how many issues are closed, how the community happens, because the tool is so nice for your product and you feel that this is the best of it. But end of the day, you are stuck with a problem. There is an open issue which is already raised and people are talking about that. It's not yet fixed. Then that is a serious issue for you, right? So you have to have a very nice and clean community support. You can't test everything at beginning of the point, but at least you can have an eye. Let's say a few examples. You go to their community channel, Slack channel, and see that people are talking about so much of issues and how many people are responding to the issue. So these are the things you can get to know that, okay, at least if I stuck somewhere, few people can come and join the hands to solve that. So that is the important stuff to be seen. That is a community support. So far, any questions? Cool. Next thing is your dev stack. Why it's so important is, let's say your product is building on top of React or Angular or Django or different frameworks. What is your dev team is working on? Know your dev stack and try to have which is something similar for that. Let's say, for example, your team is on Angular or React. You might search around a JavaScript framework to support, because if you have extra eye on your automation suite, that is the important thing. Let's say you are creating, you have automation team which is creating and running and rolling out the features. Now you are stuck it in somewhere, but now you need hands to ramp up or speed up your entire test automation suite development phase. At that time, your developers have some kind of bandwidth for that. You can educate them or you can train them on the framework. This is how it look like. You can spend at least weekly 2 hours or 3 hours and come and contribute with us. It will helpful so for us. It will helpful a lot for us. So these kind of scenarios, you can pick up your dev stack, which is very close to your developers. So that will be really, really helpful for you. Now, the extendability is the next thing. How much it can be extendable. Let's say, for example, on the initial time, you might have very minimum requirement for your automation suite. Let's say, for example, I need a suite which is automate on UI, and then it will create on the API level. So that's fine. Your test cases are getting growing. Now you are at a scale of 1,500, 2,000 test cases in place. At that time, you can come up with a different problems. One is flakiness of your test case, because we are writing so much of test cases, integrate things with each other. If one thing is getting failed, it's fail in another way around. So it's a kind of development process, which is we are very close to the development process. Let's say if some component is getting broken, it will affect others as well. The same way it will happen. So how much it can be fit into your future requirement. Let's say, for example, your test cases are 1,500 or 2,000. At that time, you can't execute everything at same machine, right? You can have a split execution. So let's say 100 test cases, you can split it 300, 400 test cases in parallel, run it on different machines, combine together and report in the one single place. So these are the features are available. How you can make your test automation execution in a future ready state. Let's say you have remote executions, you might have a different tool to execute. So what is the capability on that? So these are the few things you can have it in the mind, and then you can look for it. And then the final requirement would be, what is your budget for this automation project? So it's not very tightly coupled. Let's say, for example, you have a budget, but you found a tool which is very close to your requirement, and it speed up your process and then make your automation suite deliverable so fast. It's okay to be increase your, I mean, you can debate with that things, right? Let's say you have 10 different people on the team and you have open source to be automated, but you can spend some amount of money, but only 2 people can automate and the same deliverable can be delivered. It's all about the deliverables, not about the cost. So but if you have any such kind of thing, keep it in mind and in your requirement and ensure that that is matched. But it's not very close to the budget is something like what is your return on investment in the future. It's not about I have a tool, I have to be paid for now. It's not the case. It's all about the futuristic thinking, like, okay, how many people are going to utilize the tool? What is the end output? So what is your return on investment? Based on that, you can take the call. Okay. Any questions so far? Cool. Now, you can have a clear requirement of what is going to be done. Now, the next step would be you have to have your automation, your product in the automation eye. What I mean to say is, before the hand, we are talking about so much of metrics or things which is not even matched. I mean, it's not even close to the product. We are talking about so in general, what is the approach, how to tackle the problem. These are the things happening. But now, sorry. But now we are going to jump into the product and literally spend some time on the framework, some time on the product, and then we are going to see how to pick up the things. Let's say the first thing is how your UI interactions happen. Let's say you are on the UI component, you want to test it on the UI. Now, literally you open your product and try to inspect the product, open the Testvox and then inspect the product, how the mechanisms are getting implemented. Okay. Let's say you open your inspect and see that how your drop down is wired up. Because nowadays the development process is so advanced, or it's so customized, not in advanced, so customized. Let's say before the hand you have a select select HTML tag where you put it as a select and then you can select a drop down and then you can choose it the things. Now on the React or on Angular, you have so much of customization. The each select components customly built. They are literally creating on a div and then div, then there is a LI, there is a UI, how your implementation is happening on the UI level. What are the components, how your text box is built, how your dropdown is built, how your button is built. You have to inspect your components and trying to understand, okay, this is how implemented. What is my fit in bucket for the tool? This is the things are happening, how it's working on my tool. Maybe if you use a Selenium or Playwright, so how it will be fit into your bucket. So you can see your product on an automation eye. Try to extract information, have it in mind. Okay, this is how the things are. During the framework build, if you are going into a framework building process, how much reusable component can be built that will be reused across the automation suite. So these are the things you can see. Then you can take the complex scenario. Let's say, for example, if you are on a E2E test cases, you have components to be built. Take one complex or a lengthy E2E test and try to automate that and clearly define what can and what cannot be. Let's say, for example, in the Flipkart scenario, on the address, you can select a map and then you can go and click on the map and try to pick up the address. That is, our functionality is there. On the E2E, try to automate it. If the tool is defaultly support, that's well and good. But if your tool is not supported on the map, you don't spend so much of time on that and you directly skip it and then move forward with the thing. So what is the effort or what is the coverage you are going to miss? Pre-calculate everything. If that is okay to be skipped, please skip and move ahead with your test automation. So then you have to be understand that my component is ready, my UI is ready. I know how my UI behaves. Now, what are my prerequisites for the test? Let's say, for example, you are on a E2E test and you have to be pre-populate everything on the database. As I told earlier, I'm going to search on the text box. I'm feeding on A. If I'm feeding A, it should be written only ABC, so that I can restrict my automation into a very smaller pieces and say that, okay, if I feed this data, I'll get this data. So you have to define these data combinations and try to feed it in your automation tool. Try to feed it in your product through your automation tool. What is the feasibility? What is the capability for that? How we are going to generate the data? Once you run your test cases, I'm going to clean up, because let's say you are running for the first time, you are feeding your test data. Now, if you are going for the second execution, if you are feeding the same data, your UI might confuse, right? If you feed A, it will give you ABC for the first time. The second time it will be give ABC and another ABC, because you have the too many same component data already in the system. So it's good to clean up your data at the end of your all execution. So how you are going to clean up? What is the feasibility for that? If you have any pre or post build action, how you are going to do it? Let's say, for example, in my requirement, before starting your test, run a DB query, pull everything into a S3 bucket, and use that S3 bucket component for your input test cases. So this is your requirement, for example. Then how your pre-build or post-build action will work. What is the complexity level? What are the things need to be attached? My framework is capable enough to extend it at that level. How you can extend it. So these are the different eyes. These are the different things you need to consider. Now, you have UI tests, API tests, and DB tests. How we are going to organize your test. Let's say you are going to maintain everything on a single repository, or you are going to write a multiple different repositories. If you have API test case in one place, UI test case is one place. Now, let's say, for example, your UI test cases having an API components, and you are writing a API test in the UI test. You have another suite which is having very purely an API test. Now you are doing double the time effort, right? If, let's say, for example, if your login API is getting changed, you have to be update on the UI suite and you have to be update on the API suite. That is a very bad design on automation. So how you tackle all these problems? How to maintain everything on a single place? How to maintain everything on a single place? Do my tools are capable enough to make these adjustments, and it will be fit into the bucket or not? So these are the things you can consider for your automation things. So any questions so far? No? Okay.
Hi, Vignesh.
Yeah.
I am from manual background only. I just want to know that, for example, if you are writing some test cases for login, in case of manual testing, we can take 4 combinations. Okay. Username, password, like that. In automation also, we are able to use the same 4 test cases, or we can make it as one test case. Anything like that is there in automation? How automation test cases are writing? It is similar to the manual test case writing, or one can produce 4 or 5 automation test case, or either two manual test cases can combine as one automation, like that. How it will be? I just
okay. So for that scenario, we call it as a test data driven, where you have the multiple options are there. You might have a database to store all your combinations. Let's say you are talking about login. You have username and password. You might have a database. You might have an Excel sheet. You might have a JSON. So these are the different data source you can have. You can feed all the login passwords in row basis, or row. You can define single entry for each login and password. Now you write only one test case on automation suite. If your test cases are getting changed, your executions will be getting updated. Let's say you have 5 combinations to be tested.
Okay.
You are writing only one code which will be running against all the 5 different combinations and produce 5 different test case execution results. Now if you're updating your sixth entry in the database or a Excel sheet or a JSON or a XML file, it will be without any code change on the framework. It will be executed on the sixth time, and it will produce a 6 test cases in execution. There is absolutely zero changes on the framework side, and it only on the data side. So we call it as a data-driven framework design. So if you have so much of test cases on this level, you have to be decide, okay, how I can make my framework into a data-driven. Because if your login is growing at 100, 200 combinations, you don't touch anything on the test cases, test script side. You only touch only on the test data file side. So it will be aligned based on your data input. That's how you should consider. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, manual test cases can be used as a test data for the automation testing. Right.
Kind of, yes. It depends on how your manual test cases are writing that design, or you can connect with the team, try to meet on the midpoint. Okay, this is how I want the test case. It will work for you. It will work for me. You can clearly have a conversation and make it in a single point and agree on how we are going to write the test case. Definitely it's possible, but it depends on how we communicate as a team.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Vignesh. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Cool. Now, we are talking about so much. I know the strategy, I know the scope, I know define. I'm seeing my dev stack, I'm seeing my Slack. I mean, community support, everything is on the go. Now, what is my next step? Now, pick up the case and do a POC and measure the outputs. You make your hands dirty, open the tool, build some scripts. Before that, pick what can be the suitable candidate to pick it. You can take only one complex scenario or multiple combinations of data, whatever fits into a bucket. You define that scope very clearly and try to POC on the tools. Now you are building everything on the tool. Now what is I can measure, right? So because metrics is so much important than anything else, because metrics can speak the reality. Now you try to automate the things and come up with a estimation of time. Let's say, for example, how usually happens is when people are writing test cases, they are having a scope defined. This is a low level, this is a medium level, this is a complex level. So you can write these many complex things. I mean, you can define things, and then you can come up with the strategy, say that, okay, if that is a complex test case for this tool, this will take this much of time. Now you have 1,000 test cases to be automated. You have a metrics to measure. Let's say complex scenario takes 2 days to automate. Medium cases take 1 day. Small test cases can take half a day. Now you have a metrics, and you can clearly define, I have 1,000 test cases, 500 are complex, 200 are medium, 300 are low level. So you can have a data, you can combine together and ensure that, okay, for the entire automation, I'll take this much of time. This is my estimation for that. You have multiple tools in place. Let's say you have Selenium, you have Playwright, you have Cypress. Try all these tools. Define writing test cases. You just cannot visualize and say that this is take this much of time. You can put your hands dirty building the suit, or script, and then ensure that measure the development time. Based on that, you can come up with, say that, hey, this is taking this much of time to automate. So you can measure all these things. Is that okay? If we want to have short timeline, let's say I want to complete my entire automation in 6 months, how much resource I can need? What are my requirement for completing within the timeline? How I can measure? What are the deliverables for first month, second month, third month? How I can plan the entire strategy clear? It's all come up with what is the development time, how much measure it. So you can make your hands dirty, write it, and build the development time. Next, how much it's required on a CI/CD integration. Let's say you might say that CI/CD is a one-time effort. Yes, it's a one-time effort. But if you have, let's say, for example, you have multiple environments, okay? Dev, staging, and development. Dev, staging, and production. Now you are trying on a one environment. You might replicate the same on the different environments too. In future, you might ended up coming with a new environment as well. So how hard it's I'm sorry, how hard or what is the time estimation for the CI/CD integration? So you can measure that, hey, you have a new environment. This much of time I require to integrate my changes into your environment through CI/CD. So this is my effort. This is what is your execution time. You have 1,000 test cases. You have this many, each test case is taking this much of time. What is my entire shoot will take? If that is more than 5 to 8 hours, is that fine? If I want to execute on a 1 hour, how to break the things into bits and pieces and execute as a whole. So you can define all these, make your hands dirty and come up with the data. So you can clearly define that, hey, I have 1,000 test cases. I want to run it on a 1 hour duration. I can split through 200 threads in parallel or 100 threads in parallel. So these are the data, only come up with the metrics data. So you can clear it, you can write it and get these data done. What is the scope of the scripting? Yeah, you have to have a clear scope level, because let's say you are taking a complex scenario. That is not at all a complex, but you are writing as a complex and then you measure it and you put us this much data, but actual complex is more than that. Your entire design will be break, right? Your entire assumption is went wrong and you are in a different scenario. So you have to have a clear define of what is your scope. And if something is not going in your favor, what is your side effects to what is your acts to handle the side effects? So you have prepare plan for that as well. So that is also important. And finally, you should know what cannot your automation do, automation tool can do. So you have to clearly define that, because for that you can go to the community side or you can go to the GitHub and you can see the different issues and you can feel that, okay, these are the things are not possible. In modern day tools, they are clearly defined what cannot be. In the Cypress or a Playwright or a Test Cafe, you go to their website and they clearly mention that what is not a fit for this tool. They clearly defined everything. So know all these things before the hand, you start automating it. Okay. Now, at end of the time, you prepare all these things, come up with a document, connect with your colleagues. That is so important, because you talk to a different dev people, you can talk to a manager, and manager can be feed an input of how to tackle as a project level. Developers can be your tech side support. So you can create a document, share it with the entire team, have a brainstorming sessions on, hey, this is my tool, this is how I measure, this is what my data is. What is your view on that? What is your inputs? You can put it as a tabular column or something like that. You can simply explain these things to your team and get all the metrics or inputs and try to realign everything and start your automation. Yep. So any questions? Cool. Now we have a trend called no-code or low-code frameworks nowadays. So first we are going to see what is that. It's nothing about everything is predefined on the go, and low-code or low-code frameworks are mean to be designed, which is writing a zero coding knowledge to a lesser coding knowledge. So that's what the purpose of the tool is. Okay. Now you have a product where my product is only predominantly on UI, feeding the data, extracting on the output. These are the predominant things. You can go for that as well. So you can clearly understand what can be done, because they have supporting because most of the low code or no code frameworks are come up with some kind of cost. You have to have a support team. You don't worry about open source. You don't go for a community. You have a people who can guide you and help you on that. Try that tool. And low code or something like, yeah, absolutely. You don't need any coding knowledge. You have you have different way of doing things. Some tools are like record and playback. You just record it and playback it, and it will execute. Sometimes you have a drag and drop strategy where you have to be drag and drop, wire the things, and then feed the inputs, and it will work. So in some tools, they are supporting the DBs as well. Let's say you have to give your connection string. Your DB will be connected. You are launching the browser. You are giving connect to your database is already connected. So how to wire them up? So understand the tool better. It's all about define your strategy, match with the tool, make your hands dirty. Okay. So if that is done, what is the capability of execution? You can see that what are the cross-browser support they have, how much extensibility the framework will have. Let's say I have a very well-defined, let's say, for example, on the Flipkart website, you are going for a low-code framework, and you want to connect with a database, whether it's available or not. That is the first question. If that is there, how easy to manage it? Let's say I need to run a query to update or a read kind of thing. How to insert the query? How to make that as a very generic reusable? How the tool supports that? I don't, let's say, for example, each test cases, you have to write the same query to ensure that it's right. I mean, let's say for a login test, I need to feed the username. Each test, you need to feed the query at a test case level. There is no generic way to handle it, then that's a problem. If the query is getting changed, you have to be tested on a different places, right? So ensure to check their capabilities at your scale and then execute it and measure at what are the different places they can execute, measure everything. And the end thing is your speed of automation, because on the if you are writing a framework, you are going to manage it. It's so much of effort. The low code or no code framework advantage is the speed of automation with minimal managing effort. And what is your output out of it? How stable the product is. I mean, you have to touch it on a different places. If something is changed, you have to touch it on multiple places. That is a maintenance effort. How much it's, again, you can create your custom built framework for that. There is no purpose of going for low code or a no code framework. So you can have a clear definition of what can be done, what cannot be done, how it's fit into my bucket. So you have to analyze all these areas and then, okay, this might be a fit. If you feel that, you go and subscribe for a trial, execute it, run it, feel it, and react for that. Thank you.